Hello, I'm Ian Ross. This video is going to look closely at the 1995 update of our Holden Jackaroo and compare it with the other major models that it directly competes against. These being the Mitsubishi Pajero, Land Rover Discovery and the Jeep Cherokee. We're going to look at the engines, the on and off-road performance and the space and design of each vehicle, and the overall suitability of each vehicle for its intended market. These vehicles are all around the $50,000 mark, so the market is the more sophisticated buyer who wants a prestige vehicle that reflects his or her lifestyle or personality. The Holden Jackaroo is built by Isuzu, one of the world's largest manufacturers of commercial and recreational vehicles, and the Jackaroo's design reflects this long-standing commitment to research and excellence. Of the four vehicles here, the Jackaroo is the only one that has a specifically designed engine to suit the end use of the package. This 24-valve, all-alloy, single overhead camshaft, multi-point fuel-injected V6 engine gives the right response both on and off the road. All of these vehicles weigh around 2 tons, except the Jeep, which weighs considerably less because of its smaller overall size and the fact that it has no ladder frame chassis. They need an engine of considerable power and sophistication to provide a good all-round performance. Yet all these vehicles, except Jackaroo, use older style, less responsive engines that were originally designed for a much different purpose. Let's look at the performance statistics. As you can see, the Discovery's V8 looks to be the most powerful on paper, but it has problems transferring this to the ground. Compare its acceleration figures with the smaller but specifically designed Jackaroo V6, and you can see straight away that the Jackaroo beats the larger Discovery V8 easily. You can see that the Jackaroo also has a sizable advantage over the smaller engine of the Pajero, which with only a 3-litre, 12-valve V6 lags behind the Jackaroo quite significantly. Now the question is often asked, and probably quite rightly, as to how much power is really needed in this sort of vehicle. Obviously power is needed for 4x4 work and towing, but do you need all the power of the Jackaroo V6 when 90% of your driving will be around town on sealed roads? The answer is a most emphatic yes. The Jackaroo's V6 engine is built to cope with long periods of cruising fully loaded, 4x4 off-roading, towing and the harshness of Australian roads and conditions. The fact that the engine also has superior acceleration characteristics than most of the opposition is not for the sake of speed as much as safety. Consider this diagram on the screen, and as you can see, the Pajero takes 9 seconds to pass the Semi, which is travelling at 100 kilometres per hour, and the faster accelerating Jackaroo takes only 6 seconds. That's 50% less time than the Pajero on the wrong side of the road. A much safer option and a very sensible reason for having a bit more power. The comparison with Discovery is similar, but not quite as dramatic. And keep in mind that Discovery is using a larger capacity V8. Jeep, with its 3.9 straight-6 engine and significantly lighter body, naturally returns a better acceleration rate than Jackaroo, but at the expense of some major considerations that we'll examine later. I must digress for a moment to draw your attention to this video case that I'm holding. It's not possible to give you a full rundown of all the comparative statistics on these vehicles in the time allotted. And also, depending on what your customer intends using the vehicle for, a lot of them will be meaningless or unnecessary. Inside the case, we've included a small book that sets out all the comparative figures, plus a few explanations of technical terms to help you and your customer make a more informed decision. Take the time to read this and always keep it inside the cover. Let's look at the interiors of these vehicles. Pajero first. Look at the back seat and remember that one of the selling features of this vehicle is its 7-seat capacity. And you'll see that we need to be able to seat 3 comfortably across this middle seat. However, the inclusion of extra armrests, and there are already armrests built into the door like the Jackaroo, means that the bottom depression of each side seat is forced in to make the middle seat more like a bicycle seat. Add to this that the 2 side passengers are forced onto the edge of their seat as well when there are 3 passengers, so no one ends up being comfortable. In contrast, the Jackaroo With its wider body and simpler design, armrests in the door, has a seat design that seats 3 in comfort. You can see the middle cushion is almost twice as wide as Pajero. Now, legroom is always a major consideration in the back, and Jackaroo has more legroom than any of the others. In fact, more than the larger Toyota Land Cruiser. Let's compare the legroom in the Pajero. As we suspected, not as much. Pajero's shorter wheelbase makes the wheel wells intrude. With Discovery, you get even less. This is quite uncomfortable to get in and out of, and as you can see, there's no legroom either. Also, the back windows only wind half down. Pajero has a similar problem. The much smaller Jeep is a real squeeze to get into. And it's not a 7-seater, so you're not getting as much versatility for your money. Back here with Pajero, and it usually falls to the lady of the family to do most of the running around with the kids, the shopping, etc. In fact, the available statistics tell us that these sorts of vehicles are driven 90% of the time by women. So consider this scenario. Mum, 2 or 3 kids. One still in a baby capsule or child restraint, similar to this one, and the other school age, who want to sit in the rear seats away from the baby. If we mount the seat as we're supposed to, with the restraint strap firmly pulled up, we find it's now impossible to use the rear seats. We can't move the seat forward without unhooking the child restraint and physically taking the seat out again, and this is because Pajero has a 1-piece seat. The kids will have to climb over, or you have to release the restraint strap each time. Not very well worked out when you consider it. And even when you have got it open, not much room to get in. The Jackaroo's split seat design is far more practical. Not only is it possible to get in and out of the rear seats without touching the baby seat because of the 1/3, 2/3 split, but the access is much larger. This split seat design gives far more versatility in seating and cargo carrying options in the Jackaroo. Discovery seats are reasonably simple, but the second row seats are only secured at the top. There's no floor lock like a Jackaroo. And Jeep isn't involved in this because it's too small to have third row seats. One more consideration here is the ease with which the middle seats can be moved. The Jackaroo is essentially a one-hand operation, and don't forget Jackaroo's handy security compartment under here. Pajero's single seat requires considerable effort and prior knowledge of the system, and Jeep is awkward because of the small door opening and old-fashioned seat design. The rear access of all these vehicles is something no one seems to take notice of until well after the purchase. The diagram on the screen shows the comparative load volumes of each vehicle with both the middle seat folded forward and upright. Jackaroo obviously wins this contest without being significantly bigger overall. You immediately have to take a sizable piece off the Jeep's figure because the spare tyre is mounted inside the rear door and the Discovery's load space is more vertical than the rest. So plan on investing in a load guard unless you want to wear the luggage if the vehicle stops suddenly. In the Pajero, we get almost as much room as the Jackaroo, but is it usable? Let's remember our previous scenario again. You remember, the lady and the children. Pajero's child restraint anchors are positioned in such a way that using either of the rear seats or the cargo area becomes difficult, to say the least. Look, here are the 3 points. There's 2 in the roof, and there's 1 down here in the centre of the load space. And what this means is that with a child restraint in use, you either make it hard to use the load area because you have to move everything around the centre strap, or if you're using one or other of the seats, you get a choice of tripping over a strap or travelling with one across your head. In contrast, the Jackaroo's load area is only marginally affected by the restraint straps. You can see the anchor points in a line here, 1, 2 and 3. tucked behind the second seat in such a way that the load space and both the rear seats can be used comfortably. While we're here, there's another thing to consider, and that's the ergonomics of opening these rear doors. As you can see, the Jackaroo's unique 70-30 split allows the large door to open down the curb. It's designed for the right-hand drive market. It's smaller and lighter than both Pajero's and Discovery's one-piece doors that open into the traffic, and it can't be blown closed on you by a passing truck like the other two. The Jackaroo door has a positive lock on opening, something lacking in both Pajero and Discovery. Yes, Pajero has a locking mechanism, but this is hard and heavy to use and sufficiently crude to warrant a printed safety warning. The Jackaroo design is far superior. It's safer and just as easy to use. Another bonus for Jackaroo buyers is the better sound quality provided by the 6-speaker stereo system compared to the others, which only have 4. And being mounted high up, the rear speakers cannot be obstructed by loads or when the third row seat is folded up. While we should be fully aware that the vehicles around me will spend the majority of their working life on sealed roads, they are four-wheel drives and are bought because of one or more advantages that these sorts of vehicles have. This could be the 4x4 capability, the better visibility from being higher off the ground, the greater legal towing ability, or the extra space or seating capacity most of these vehicles offer. Jeep makes a big thing of its monocoque construction, when what this really means is that it doesn't have a ladder frame chassis like the other three. It is essentially built like a normal sedan car, and comparing it to the Discovery, it's obvious it is much lower and has little visibility advantage over a sedan. It's very car-like and small compared with its competitors. A ladder frame chassis ensures that the vehicle will withstand the twisting and shocks of bad terrain, makes it easier to attach such things as bull bars and tow bars, and is essential when you need to be towed or snatched out of a tough off-road situation. Jeep is an older design, with leaf springs at the rear, which will make it handle poorly when the road gets bad, and drum brakes at the rear, in contrast to all the others which have four-wheel discs. This does not add up to either a good off-road or towing package when compared to the others. Discovery and Jeep both suffer off-road with live or rigid front axles that transfer any bumps on one side to the other, which hampers steering and makes for a more uncomfortable ride. And Discovery has virtually no underbody protection compared to Jackaroo's extensive protection. Pajero does better than Discovery and Jeep with independent front suspension, but it's the Jackaroo that seems to get the off-road package together. Jackaroo's independent front suspension, 16-inch wheels, Pajero has 15s, and this gives Jackaroo more clearance, and Jackaroo's unique 4-link rear suspension that holds the vehicle down better, reduces roll, and still provides more wheel travel. Jackaroo's suspension was developed through extensive testing in outback Australia and is well suited to handle the wide range of surfaces we get in this country. Ground clearance is also a major factor in off-road performance. The chart shows the relative clearance of the 4 models. Jackaroo's superior ground clearance, combined with its independent front suspension, long travel, 4-link rear suspension, and extensive underbody protection, makes it a true off-road performer. Now, do not get confused with towing specifications. Many people read the manufacturer's brochure and believe they can legally tow whatever the brochure says. Not so. This is an engineering specification and bears little or no relation to your state law. Look at the notes included with the video and you'll find that in your state, Pajero, Jackaroo and Discovery can all tow legally approximately the same amount, and Jeep considerably less. The next thing we should discuss is the contentious issue of four-wheel drive systems. Pajero has what is called a full-time, part-time four-wheel drive system, and they call it Super Select. Discovery has what is called a permanent four-wheel drive system, and though they call it a different name, Jeep has essentially the same system as Pajero. Jackaroo has part-time selectable four-wheel drive. Now it sounds like Jackaroo has the inferior system, doesn't it? Not so. We haven't the time here to explain the workings of these systems. Read the book for that. But be very much aware of this. The efficiency of a four-wheel drive system depends largely on how many wheels are turning in the worst possible situation. When you're up to your knees in crocodiles and the river's rising, it won't matter what your system is called as much as how well it works. How many wheels have power and are turning? And the answer is surprising. Pajero will have 3, Jeep will have 3, Discovery will have only 2, because unlike the others, it doesn't have a limited slip differential in the rear to guarantee drive into both rear wheels. And Jackaroo will have 3 as well. Constant four-wheel drive does not mean all wheels turning all the time. It usually means the ability to provide power to all or any of the wheels. It may only be one wheel, depending on the circumstances. Now, curiously, Australia is the only country that believes there is any value in constant or full-time four-wheel drive. Most other countries have decided it isn't really necessary. In fact, even Australia is finding that the problems of increased wear and tear on the front end, extra front-end vibration, road noise and component failure really isn't worth it. And a number of businesses have started to specialise in turning full-time four-wheel drive systems back to part-time systems, similar to what is standard in the Jackaroo. The supposedly more sophisticated four-wheel drive systems of Pajero, Discovery and Jeep are confusing to operate, complicated, heavy, and this contributes to greater component costs, wear and tear, and a less comfortable ride. Not to mention fuel economy. Now, manufacturers are not required to publish fuel consumption figures for commercial vehicles, but the best source of comparison is the motoring journals. Here then are the figures reported by Wheels magazine in its May 1995 issue. Don't forget that Jeep is considerably smaller and lighter than the others. For all the criticism of these full-time systems, there are remarkably few about the selectable four-wheel drive system used in Jackaroo. This system is used in most rural-type vehicles such as Hilux, Rodeo and Patrol because of its rugged reliability, its longevity and ease of use. In this simple system, the front drivetrain is totally disconnected whenever the vehicle is in two-wheel drive. This reduces wear on drive components and tyres while maintaining better fuel economy. In preparation for engaging four-wheel drive, the freewheeling hubs must be locked from outside the vehicle. But this can be done at any convenient time, and then you can drive for any distance. Four-wheel drive can then be selected from the driver's seat whenever needed by shifting the transfer lever between 2 high and 4 high at speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour. Now we'll go over the general points of design and comfort as they apply to the driver. With Jeep, the driver's seat is low and tilted back like a passenger vehicle. Not good for visibility or a long drive. Not a lot of headroom and a very 70-ish dash. It's comfortable but very small. Land Rover makes a big thing about Discovery's bolt-on aluminium panels and their resistance to rust. And while this was certainly a good feature 30 years ago, its value is questionable now. Modern galvanizing techniques have made panel corrosion almost a thing of the past, and manufacturers' warranties support this. Steel panels provide better body strengthening than the aluminium panels promoted by Discovery, which are softer, easier to damage, and more costly to repair. Also, Discovery seems to have a problem with panel fitment, which leads to dust entry and poor appearance. Now, in the driver's seat, Discovery's English controls take some getting used to. Indicators on the other side to most cars, and a bonnet release you have to get out and go around to open. It only has single door seals, Jackaroo has triple seals, and interior fitment is poor. The console is poorly designed and it's hard to use the grab handles. Pajero is better finished than the first two, though the old-fashioned tilt meter dates the dash. Also, it lags behind Jackaroo in the areas of seat travel and general interior dimensions. Though Pajero is marginally longer and wider than Jackaroo on the outside, Jackaroo has more usable interior space. It's the expensive plastic add-ons and overriders on Pajero that make up this difference, and they only cause problems in off-road situations where they reduce the exit angle and are prone to expensive damage. Jackaroo's understated elegance reflects the forefront of international design and engineering, where the emphasis is on function and suitability rather than exterior cosmetics. Jackaroo, with its new dash, its light grey trim, has a fresh look. Velour upholstery and hard-wearing loop pile carpet are in keeping with the price tag of these vehicles, unlike Pajero, Discovery and Jeep Sport that only feature ordinary cloth and lower quality carpet. Last but not least, we should discuss warranty and ease of maintenance here. You should be aware of the differences between the various warranties offered on these vehicles and the ease of activating them. Obviously, the Holden warranty is more comprehensive, far-reaching and has far greater ease of activation because of the large Holden dealer network and the added assistance of the Australian auto clubs. Also, don't forget that Jackaroo uses the same computer diagnostic tools as the rest of the Holden range, making fault finding and rectification faster and cheaper. The May '95 issue of Wheels magazine, in its four-way comparison between Jackaroo, Jeep Cherokee Limited, Land Rover Discovery V8 and Pajero GLS, drew these conclusions. The results speak for themselves. Clearly, Jackaroo adds up as the best all-round 4x4 wagon. Wheels magazine realises this, as do the RACV and the NRMA, and quite a few other knowledgeable organisations. Jackaroo owners are selective and recognise the advantages of superior engineering and design, which translate into a better all-round package for all the different uses it can be put to. The experts rate it highly, owners and drivers love it, so it'll only be a matter of time before the secret gets out.